I couldn't do anything else but wipe everyone off the face of the planet.
I couldn't do anything but genocide.
They kept coming into my territory, so I had to wipe their civilization from the planet. Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
And I'm not Nolan.
You are not, but we are so glad you're here for episode 403. And yes, Nolan is unable to be here with us today. He's always missing this podcast.
Yeah, he's so unfaithful.
But Garlisle, loyal community member Garlisle, has stepped in for our third before, I think in Kenny's place, and he was so kind enough to step in for Nolan this week. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you're here, Garlisle.
Hello, and hello everybody at home. It's me again.
Garlisle does, you may be familiar with his voice. He leads our retro recaps and has been on the show before. Director times two. A lot of different episodes. Garlisle's around. Okay, question of the week. What is your favorite video game save point? Sometimes we have questions of consequence and sometimes we don't. This is one of the latter.
The first thing that popped into mind for me, just because iconic, was the Final Fantasy save point.
I do love them. Wait.
Just like vision.
Which Final Fantasy 7 is what I'm assuming? Okay.
7. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. 7. I like that you know that that's my default also. But my favorite save point is a computer menu. I don't want to play games that have save points.
Your favorite...
I want to be able to just save at will at any point.
Your favorite save point is Control S.
Yes.
It would be. Garlisle, I know that you've got some good save points in mind.
Yeah, I had to do some thinking about this, because every once in a while you get ones that go a little bit extra beyond. So I thought back, and actually the first episode I wrote in was Mega Man Legends. And I don't know if you remember the save point of Data the Dancing Monkey, who was your little companion. He had but there's some good things about him, okay? Like, first off, if you talk to him afterwards, like, he can remind you what you're doing, which for the PS1 was something games generally didn't do.
That's nice.
Which is, like, more save points need to remind you what's going on. And second off, the fact that he saves your data was important to the story. There's actually a big plot twist towards the end of the game about that fact. And yeah. I really love that clever use of, like, the meta existence of a save point.
Yeah, I love whenever it's integrated well. If it's a diary or a book, or like, give me an excuse at least. This is such a context breaking thing you're having to do anyways, that if I can't just save, which is the better experience, I want to have a justification.
I will give an answer for Nolan. He will thank me for this. The typewriter Resident Evil room save. It is not only a safe place and one of the few in those kinds of games that Kenny will not play. It has some of the best music in video games. Like, some of those save room music themes are so good, and the typewriter clicking, there's something so peaceful about that.
Is this your answer that Nolan will appreciate, or is this I'm answering on behalf of Nolan and also going to give my own answer?
A little bit of both. I'm going to give my own answer, but I do think that's a solid one.
Yeah. If you didn't bring that one up for Nolan, I probably would have.
Yeah, I've got another, and it's a recent one. My wife and I right now are playing Alan Wake 2, and right now it's got the same vibes as Resident Evil because bad things are happening out there. But if you come into a room that is well lit, you are protected, and on the table is a coffee thermos and like a donut or a scone or something, and that's where you save at. And so as soon as you save it, the coffee is, some of it's drank and the scone is eaten or something. So, like,
that's perfect.
Yeah, it really works well. It's integrated. You said integration. I think it was integrated really well. But whether it is the question mark, the iconic question mark in Final Fantasy VII, or some integrated room, or a dancing monkey, or just Control S, there's a lot of really good save options out there.
And we want to hear about your favorites as well. So jump into Discord. There's a space for you to discuss the question of the week waiting, and we'd love to know all of your favorite situations.
You did it for me. A space to have a conversation.
Oh, I
Space.
thought you were going to talk about saving more than just data, but humanity.
Saving data, humanity, space. There's just too many here. I'm just gonna roll with it though. Like in our retro game of the week, Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri.
Overview.
Alpha Centauri, belonging to Mr. Meier, came out in 1999 for the PC. It is a turn-based strategy game, or I don't know why. Look, you don't come to New Game Plus for proficient video game knowledge. You're not going to find that here.
Every once in a while, we'll have a nugget.
But then you called it a nugget cancels it out.
Fair enough.
Okay. I'm just now learning the actual terminology of 4X games.
For 4X games?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that it's broadly for people outside of playing the genre. I don't know if it's a well-known term.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like you guys have talked about games in this genre very much on the podcast before.
No, I think what?
Right, we haven't done it very much,
2 other times?
but at least once, if not twice. But I don't know if we actually brought up the term 4X, but it's been a while.
I don't think we did.
4X is a genre, a subgenre of turn-based strategy games, and it stands for 4 words that begin with the letter X. Explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. None of them beginning with X, but you get the point. And those are the primary things that you're doing in the turn-based environment. Why did they feel the need to differentiate between turn-based and 4X specifically?
I don't know if there's a need for it, but the types of games, these sort of Civ-style games, play very differently than just turn-based games. They really are their own genre in a lot of ways in terms of what you're doing and your objectives. And they're not all the same, but they follow enough of a kind of, I don't know, format feel that it needed a title. I don't know that I love that title, and I think the series has evolved away from those specific 4, things as the only win conditions in even 4X games these days. But you got to call games something.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the big differentiator where people use 4X is you can get strategy games that are just hey, you're manipulating your tanks on the battlefield and you're worried purely about the military side is where strategy usually is. And 4X, this is the kind of game that expands beyond that. We are developing a whole civilization, founding cities, all that.
And it's different play styles. It's this implication of you can play this civilization and you can focus on economy if you want to do that. You can focus on diplomacy if you want to do that. You have, you have more than one style of play that you can play and win. Strategy. Yeah, it's civilization.
Admittedly, I am not well versed in this subgenre, but when I was looking at the list of 4X games, the only ones that I recognized are civilization games. And so I have a strong suspicion that 4X is pretty much dominated, the whole subgenre, by one IP specifically.
At least at least in the popular consciousness, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, it's the iconic one. There's others,
sure.
and I think some other good ones, but it definitely it's the root, the branch, the trunk. That's how trees work. It's the trunk of the tree that is the genre.
The developer of this game is Firaxis Games, and it was published by Electronic Arts. I want to speak to Firaxis a little bit because a few years before the release of this game, so it was in 1996, Sid Meier, and is an actual person, by the way, not in-game, an actual person that attached his name to a lot of the games that he created. He and a couple of other developer friends left a different company called Microprose that were the creators of Civilization. I mean, Sid Meier was kind of the creator of Civilization, but with microprose. And they left that and founded this company, Firaxis. And they were talking about what do we want to do? We just created Civilization 2, which we played back in the day, and it was bad. And they decided this is what we know, but they couldn't take the IP of Civilization with them. So they just decided to clone it and take it into space. And they created this game, Alpha Centauri.
It works. If you're playing Civilization 2 correctly, this is a very hot take, you're going to often win by going to space, by shooting your settlers towards literally Alpha Centauri. And so it's a very direct sequel, even if it's made by a different company. It's the
same people, but different company,
and
right?
Basically the same game.
Yeah,
so they did do some new things here.
It's kind of interesting with Firaxis, actually, because like usually when you ditch a company and start your own, you really have to do this like legally distinct thing. But like a couple years after this, Firaxis ended up picking up the actual rights to Civilization and XCOM and all their old stuff, and just now they're the ones who make it.
Right.
So there was a good ending to this story.
It is, but if they, I would have thought it would have had to be distinct, but they just changed the names of certain things. Instead of Wonder, like creating a Wonder, we're going to call it Secret Project. Instead of, like, everything has its clone, its double in this game. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I do think it's something to be aware of. Here's the story. And in my opinion, the story is more important here than in other Civilization titles, my experience. Story is not that big of a thing in Civilization. Here, you've got a story that sets it up. You've got a story, of course, that concludes it. But you've got story pieces throughout the game as well. The space race that concluded with Civilization, Kenny mentioned, continues in Alpha Centauri. It's the 22nd century, and the United Nations has sent Unity, a colonization mission, to a faraway planet called Planet. And
stuff has had worse names named. Humans aren't great at naming, is what I'm going to say.
I mean, I don't think it's too bad. And it's actually the planet of Chiron, I think, but they call it Planet. Unfortunately, on their way to the planet, disaster strikes and the spacecraft malfunctions, and so 7 escape pods have scatter across the new planet, each led by a different charismatic leader, and you are the leader of one of those factions that must explore, expand, exfoliate.
No, that's wrong.
Oh, well.
He's playing 5X games while all of us are playing 4X.
Exterminate the other ones, survive, or X survive and win the game.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit more to it than that. I don't know if you were aware of this, but there's actually like short stories and novels around Alpha Centauri you might be interested in. It turns out it wasn't like a malfunction that drove the civilizations apart, but rather like the leader of the ship, the captain, got assassinated, and it's never specified by who, interestingly. There's never like a single defined bad guy in the story.
That's why everybody's pointing their fingers at each other, because we don't really know.
And what that left it with is all of these different groups had different ideas of what it was about humanity that had caused it to fail back on Earth. Like, normally when you think about a civilization type game, you're thinking of like, oh, well, you're playing as China or Egypt or Russia. In this, you're playing as like one group that thinks that humanity should have set everything aside and just focus on science. One group that thinks like humanity should have just capitalismed harder, frankly. One that's like hyper-environmentalists and stuff. So you are playing as these different separated political ideologies instead of the usual like historical countries.
Including your exfoliators, who are going for the cultural win.
Oh, is that what they're doing?
Gameplay.
All right, Dustin, this game has a lot going on. I'm worried you were a little overwhelmed. I'm curious which part of the gameplay conversation you want to start with.
A little overwhelmed. Kenny, at the start of the week, you sent me a 252-page manual for this game.
Well, I didn't know it was that long.
252 pages. I don't think we played a game before that required 252 pages of explanation.
You've had play guides that are probably that long.
This isn't a guide.
Entire entire walkthroughs.
This is explaining how to play the game.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll just quickly walk through each of the menus players are going to see, and spend a second talking about each one. And it won't take us long.
Cue the audio of dumb SpongeBob saying whatever 10 hours later or whatever. Ha ha ha, LOL. Okay, listen. Here's what we can do. There's 7 factions. We don't have to talk about them expansively, which is another X. But they each have different motivations, they each have different advantages, they each have different disadvantages, and I thought they did a really good job of it. But I do have a caveat there, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it. Let's go through them. There are the Lord's Believers, which is definitely an interesting one. They are your religious zealots. You've got Gaia's stepdaughters, which are the environmentalists. You've got the Human Hive, this authoritarian regime. You've got Morgan Industries, which is like these capitalists. And then you've got the peacekeeping forces, your humanitarians. You've got the Spartan Federation, which I bet you can guess what they're all about. It's paramilitary survivalists. And then you've got the University of Planet, which are your scholars. And I think it was fascinating, the variety of them. I don't love the pigeonholing of them.
Well, thankfully, if you don't want them to be pigeonholed, you don't have to. So much of this game is customizable. One of the options you have on spinning up is to randomly assign personalities to different leaders so that they're not always just doing their normal thing. It does feel a little cookie cutter, though, whether you do that or not, because you've got sort of, these play styles that you're going to see. But until you get to later 4X games where leadership personality is more randomized and sort of part of the gameplay and how you do diplomacy, this kind of works. It keeps it from just everybody being generic and the same, and gives you some reasons to play different factions, to see which of the strengths you like, to lean into some of your strengths on certain leaders, or to balance some of your strengths with your play style. So I think it works here.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of room to adapt them to different goals. Like if you play as the university, that means that you are the science faction. Your whole deal is that you are developing new tech and new weaponry and everything way the heck faster than everybody else. You're probably aiming for the game's scientific victory. There's a couple different ways to win the game, but you can still leverage that scientific advancement and be pointing lasers at your enemies when they're still basically walking around with normal pistols,
which I did a number of times.
Oh, you're also a university boy, Kenny?
I always have been, for the early Civs, I've always gone sort of science heavy. That's probably not a surprise. I still tend to have that play style. But yes, even if I'm going to do a military victory, I want to do it by technological dominance. I don't want to out strategic you. I just want to have the better unit that can just come in and laser you and you're dead.
I played a couple of different ways this week, which is interesting, and I should get a pat on the back for that. I played a few different ways because
I'm actually so proud.
One game can take you a long time. Honestly, this is one of those games where I've watched Kenny play Civilization 6 or something and be in a campaign over the course of months.
They can take a long time if you do the right variation.
There are so many different choices to be made every single turn. In this game, they give you a lot of automation, which we'll get to. But I did play multiple times. My first playthrough, I played as the Peacekeepers. I actually went in wanting to get everybody together. We're unity, right? We want to come to this new planet and we want to do it right. We don't need to fight. We just need to.
That's so on brand.
Yeah. And so I was aiming for a diplomatic victory to unite everyone. And I did. I actually did. I was playing on the easiest difficulty, and there's like 6 or 7 difficulties here, but I wanted my first try to be on the easiest one. So I became the planetary governor, and then I became the supreme leader, which sounds bad, but I was peaceful, and so we all united under me, and I won my first attempt with a diplomatic victory.
Yeah, I really truly am so proud. I did 2 playthroughs through this week as well. I think this is maybe the only time that multiples of us have beaten a game more than once in a week. I immediately rushed to do a scientific victory. They don't call it that, but it's transcendence. You get ahead on technology, and
leave behind
kind of
the mortal coil.
Right. I think it's almost a weird, like, you and the planet become one. The planet you're on almost like has a like sentience or something. I wasn't really following the story there hard, but it's some kind of like weird over the top, like moving beyond humanity or whatever. And that was fun. But that playthrough, I played very much just to beat the game. I wanted a taste of it. I did everything I could to go as fast as I possibly could. I didn't get into the details. And so then I played a slower, more methodical campaign where I just killed everybody. Because you've got to at some point in these kind of games.
Garlo, what was
my first one this week was I got home, started up, went for the scientific victory. In true Civilization fashion, achieved it at like 3 a.m. because that's how you do with these games.
Absolutely.
One more turn.
One more turn.
And then the second time I actually kicked on the expansion pack of the game.
Oh, fun.
And tried playing as the Nautilus Pirates, whose whole deal is that they start out with their cities on the sea.
In the sea, yeah.
And that's like the only place that they can build. But you can just take over the entire oceans while other civilizations are still landlocked, and just completely shove them aside and went, nope, my planet now.
That's great.
So my second playthrough, I tried University of the Planet, and my goal was to rapidly discover new tech because I wanted to transcend. But what I assume is also true Civilization fashion, everyone started fighting. And so I couldn't do anything else but wipe everyone off the face of the planet.
I couldn't do anything but genocide.
They kept coming into my territory, so I had to wipe their civilization from the planet.
I do have to say, the AI is really aggressive in this, and like they are pretty much pre-programmed that like no matter what you do, one of them's gonna hate you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And their word means nothing to them. They're like, hey, you want to be in a treaty? And then, like, a turn and a half later, they just, like, invading you for no reason.
I have someone attack me, and then they'll call me up on the comm link and say, if you just give me all of your money, we'll stop. No, I'm gonna destroy you. Don't ever put me in charge of a nation. Okay, I then also... Hey, for my third playthrough, Kenny, I booted up the expansion, Alien Crossfire, which has multiple new factions, including the pirates, and Kenny, 2 alien species that are at war with one another, and they crash land on planet. And I actually, for this one, chose the Manifold Usurpers, which maybe by their name you can tell, they are not nice. And I systematically tried to wipe out all life on the new planet. I haven't finished that one, but that has been my goal with that. Just go and destroy everything.
You've gotten a taste for blood, and now we know which X is your X.
Well, yeah. This is an alien that an alien species that is they set it up as a warring thing. So what I did was when I chose my faction in any of these playthroughs, I chose it saying I want to lean into the way that they're setting up this faction.
Yeah, which makes sense, and is I think the most fun way to play it is to kind of embrace your style and really run with it. Let's get into a little bit of the weeds, not deep into the forest, because this forest is dense and full of menuing options and customizations. But let's get into a little bit of the weeds of what you're doing. Your controlling cities.
And if you're already
so
bored, you can skip the next 30 minutes and come back and you can hear us continue.
It won't be that long. You're controlling cities. So like choosing what things they do, what they build, what their internal resources are, like which ones are being utilized. So you've got city management. You're controlling sort of technology. Possibly the default here, especially on the initial play style, was an interesting thing Dustin and I talked a lot about this week, because the actual default version of this game auto picks technologies for you, which is weird and kind of off-putting and not something that the other Civ games have done. Again, there's customizable ways around that. We can talk about some of that as well. But you've got technology management. You've got unit management. So the units you are building, you can choose to take over the map and explore and find other nations. Use them to fight, use them to take over territory, use them to make discoveries. You've got diplomacy, where you're talking and interacting with the other nations. And then you've got, I don't know, sort of like management of your culture as a whole sorts of choices, the things that you're researching, where you're putting your resources, and in sort of what variety. So sort of your society management stuff as well. I think if you just keep those big buckets, that kind of covers everything, sort of.
Yeah,
now
and if that sounds like a lot, yeah, it kind of is. To cycle back around to something Dustin brought up earlier, fortunately, a lot of this you can let the game automate. Until you are comfortable handling it yourself, you can just go, hey, I want somebody to basically take over the city for me and just focus on putting up like what seems like good military units for me. Okay, thanks, bye. I'm closing this window. Yep. I'll come back to it in 50 turns when I think I'm ready to add this on.
But the nice thing is you can choose which things are automated. So if you want to have this be a game of strategy where your cities just kind of go on autopilot and build things for you, and what you're doing is moving armies around and fighting and doing a warfare sim, that's cool. If you want your armies to automatically do their thing, you can set them to be automated and even set up some rules for how you want them to behave. And then you can go in and control and manage the cities and like make them do the things you want. So it gives you some options to kind of really lean into avoiding the parts of the game you don't enjoy, spending more time in the parts of the game that you do. And I don't know, I felt like it was a good balance if you're going to go as involved in giving us a million options to be able to opt out of portions of those strategically. Felt kind, like from a developer point of view.
I chose to play a social sim. So the only things that I did was what a true leader actually does and has the important conversations and makes the important decisions. Other than that, I left it up to the people that I employed. And so
you did lots of automating.
Control A was my hotkey of choice. That's automate. So anytime there was a new unit that came out.
Shift A?
God, there's so many.
Maybe it's Shift A,
which
is a very important new thing to bring up here. Hey, all of you out there, if you're about to hit Control A, don't. It's Shift A. Shift A to automate any new unit. Because here's the thing, Kenny. If you're not automating, which I know that you and other weird 4X people, spreadsheet lovers do, you will end up having 100 decisions on any given turn? No.
In a game like this, I normally would do very little automation, and I love that. I love getting into the weeds, making all the decisions, really trying to maximize how efficient everything is, but that's very, very slow. And so because we were trying to crank through this game and get an understanding of it in a week, which normally would be like my spin-up time for a campaign in one of these, while I just like meander through it for months at a time, I also found myself doing a lot of automating, and I was a little worried that the AI there would be completely awful. It's certainly still late 90s AI, nothing actually intelligent about it, but the rule sets they have set up for what your stuff does is not too bad. I felt like most of the time, if I chose to hand over control of something to the computer and let it take care of it for me, it did a decent job, and that was actually kind of welcome.
did a decent job. You still some of my they're not cities in this one. I think you're getting confused with Civilization. I think they're bases or something or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's the same
Details.
I still there were still people revolting in my cities.
Sure.
But because on top of that, you're not only facing the forces that we've mentioned, the factions, there is alien life on the planet itself. And so between a lot of tiles that are covered in fungus, so you can't build anything on it until you terraform it. And then when you terraform it more, the planet sends the alien life after you. There's these mind worms that, and the description in game is terrifying, that like it's more of a mental like battle that these things do with you, and they can come and wipe out your fleets if you're not protecting yourself. So you've got this internal, external, you've got this planet force that's coming against you, this alien species that's coming against you while you're trying to get things set up too. There's just so much here.
I'm gonna say, I said I covered all the buckets, and I'm just realizing I covered maybe half the buckets. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, the mindworms function, like, if you have played Civilization, for those at home who might be more familiar, usually you have, like, the barbarians in the game, which are just, like, the roving early game, like, hey, don't leave your cities undefended, by the way. In this game, they don't stop. There isn't a point where they just stop being a threat. In fact, they get worse and worse. The more that the more that your civilization pollutes, as opposed to like slightly dampening your productivity in most games, the more that your civilization pollutes, the more the planet itself fights back in this game, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And like you can actually trigger like global disasters. At the end of one of my games, like we were about to be like, oh yeah, a ton of the global like sea level was about to rise. Like you'd better put your cities under domes or they are about to get wiped out. Like
that's interesting, yeah. One of the things that I didn't love, Kenny alluded to earlier, and it baffles me. I got it eventually. I understood why they made this decision, but your base rules has blind research turned on. And what that means is that there is no clear tech tree in this game. There is a tech tree, and I actually discovered that when you purchased the game, you received a fold-out poster of the tech tree. Still, it's still unclear like what exactly you need to get where. But listen, in this game, it's set to blind research, meaning that you don't have control over which technologies are discovered, which to me was baffling because like that is if you're not just going into battle, which you need tech there too, that I'm wanting to min-max. I'm wanting to optimize my tech decisions so that I can get to the technology that I want, particularly when I was trying to transcend, because there is a relatively easy branch to get there, but with blind research turned on, who knows when you're going to get there.
Yeah, that one
with blind research turned on, you just research everything.
Yeah,
and then transcend.
That one felt so weird in the face of all the automation options that it wasn't like, oh, we'll show you the tech tree, but we'll recommend one for you as just an easy choice. But no, it's something you have to pick at the start of the game, whether you are doing blind research or actually having control, and that felt really dumb to me.
It did. And even if you turn it off, you still don't have full control. They give you a random assortment of text then that you're able to choose from.
Of the things that are available,
yes.
It presents you with some choice. I think one choice like from each branch most of the time, but then there's some variations depending on where you're at in the branch and your levels and dependencies, and so there's a little bit of rules there.
It gives you a little bit more flexibility, and I actually, after my first playthrough, I turned that to where I can control it a little bit more. I get now why they would automate it, because there really is so much going on in the game that is just another thing to not. But like the other things where in game you're able to make those decisions of like whether it's automated or not, they should have allowed you in game to like figure out something.
Absolutely, you should have been able to toggle that later. I think the developers were very aware of how in the weeds this game could be and overwhelming. And so they're trying to simplify things. And they did that in a number of ways as well. I know you can only do so much of that in a game this complex, but they had fairly good tutorials that walk you through sort of types of things and wait to do a tutorial on one sort of section of gameplay type until you get to the place where you need it. They also had like menu tiering where you could keep menus like a little bit more basic, or you could turn on advanced menuing if you really, really wanted to drill down into the weeds. You can do things like automatically just turn on a default automation, but then you can also get into the weeds and set automation rules for your units. I think they arguably did go too far here on the number of things you can get into if you wanted, but at least they were so thoughtful of trying to give you ways to have that not be so overwhelming. And I think technology choice was one of those, though I wish they'd kind of inverted it. I wish that's one that they had, I don't know, handled differently, because you're right. It's a very sort of core component of how these games feel. And to me, an almost like identity of what you're doing kind of choice, like almost the primary part of the gameplay. So I was frustrated too that was kind of hidden by default.
Aged.
I'm just going to get this out there. Pre-2000 turn-based strategy games are archaic. Come on, Kenny. They are fossils.
The genre is still thriving.
Which has nothing to do with what I said.
Yeah, the genre may still be thriving, but coming into this from like my more recent Civilization things, there are a bunch of just UI improvements that this game could really benefit from.
Absolutely. It feels pre-2000 menuing. But to say that means it's archaic is
true.
I don't know. That's a strong word.
You're just offended. It's not as bad as Civilization 2. Now, it's been a while, and I feel like if I came back to Civilization 2 at this point, that I would be able to understand it a little bit more. But I just remember Civilization 2, and I know this isn't the exact same, but we played one of the earliest PC version of Sim City, and that also was archaic menuing, and it's not pleasing to look at. It's not pleasing to go through unless you love spreadsheets. If you spend the majority of your day putting in code in spreadsheets and populating numbers, then these things will not be too difficult for you. But if you don't do those things and have friends, then you are going to struggle to walk through the menus in here.
If you're very glad that all games today have been ruined by letting you play them on a controller and have menus that are so simplified that you can't have any controller customization at all, then yeah, maybe this isn't the game for you.
Yeah.
The pendulum has swung way too hard
right now,
in the other direction.
Right now you're hearing from someone who, when we did our top 10 controller buttons, had at least 3 or 4 buttons from the keyboard and mouse, which are those controller buttons?
I am a PC fanboy. It's what I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be too far on either side, but I was a little bothered by the fact that they had not yet discovered, we can just click to move a unit. You have to drag your unit to move them. That one for me specifically felt a little bit.
Yeah, the revelation of not using mouse but using your 9-key numbers if you get there for unit control is a huge quality of life improvement.
Interesting.
If you're going to like micromanage your units.
I was right clicking on the units when I needed to move them, because if they're stacked, good luck getting on the right one, but I was right.
You got a stack screen. You just select the one on the stack you need.
I was right clicking, activating the unit, and then I was clicking on another tile and say like, go here. And that was when I was micromanaging, but I didn't do that much because that slows down the gameplay tremendously. I would typically do that when I was like, no, I need to take out this person's base, or I see enemies coming. So like I need to divert some attention there. But, and I know we've mentioned it, automation is key here. And so like most of the time, even for me, there's pop-ups of like, hey, this unit might do well just staying at the base and protecting the base. So I would just obey, I would click H or whatever to keep it in that home base. And I even the scouts, like at the beginning, I would press dash or whatever slash and send them to scout automatically. There's just so many things that can be automated that do help, so you're not stuck in the menus all the time, which I do appreciate. But if you're wanting to like delve deeply or have great control, there's going to be a lot of menuing, and it does feel like DOS.
So yeah, it's going to feel like an old game. I mean, our audience likes old
Listen to
games
this guy.
generally. Like, we're a retro gaming podcast. I'm unapologetic about the fact that it's a PC title from the 90s, but that won't necessarily appeal to everybody, and it's worth highlighting.
One thing that I think is somewhat modern and is worth talking about is the data logs of the game, which is basically the game's help file is intensely comprehensive. And like a lot of the things in it, if you're looking up one topic, it'll have like, hey, this button is hyperlinked. You click that, it jumps to that topic in particular. It's just like a literal in-game wiki that's fully navigatable, and that helps a lot.
And if you read them all, you need to update your Goodreads list because you've read at least a couple of books this year because there is so much content and they link to other. I think it's calling it an in-game wiki is a great description there.
Absolutely.
Because that's what you have, which is nice if you want to stop playing a game and read, but it's not my favorite way to learn about systems.
No, and I think they could have found even more natural ways to do that, but they acknowledge the fact that understanding like technology and what it means is an important part of your gameplay. For example, like you're doing your interactions with your diplomacy. There's a lot of choices. Someone will come to you and say, "Hey, do you want to like trade this tech for that tech?" And you have an option on there that's like, "Oh, let me consult my." I think they call it data link or something, but my encyclopedia, just so I like can have context on what the implications of that will mean. So you're not doing that blind.
Yeah. One thing that you're not playing these types of games for, two things, are the graphics or the music.
Maybe not in 1999. 4X, like, generally has some banger music and some nice immersive graphics as they improve.
This guy came out of base. This guy came out of base, pressed H, and now he's doing everything he can to defend his base from.
I'm holding my
He's on defense mode right now. But it's shocking to me that I read that when this game released, the game's graphics were widely acknowledged to be above average for the time, which, okay, then what was average at the time?
Yeah, that's what's so easy to remember because we've come so far. All those cutscenes,
those were
with
pretty
the
cool.
like with the music and the visuals and like really cool graphics with stuff moving on, feel a little janky today. They don't future-proof super well, but like at the time were crazy and like, you know, like notably good. Yeah, graphics themselves definitely have a kind of older look, though.
Yeah, I think the thing that bothered me the most about the visual look of the game is just that, if you see a tile, it's like, okay, I sort of know what that tile is. The colors are a little muddy. But once you start getting, like, units on that tile and improvements on that tile and stuff, it starts piling up really quickly to, like, okay, what is going on in this space? I cannot tell at a glance.
It gets very muddy, and the I know they wanted to keep Planet looking consistent, but it was very sort of I don't know, neutral and samey. Lots of like browns and greens, and like it definitely was kind of hard to tell which different like biomes are which, and so I think they could have done a little bit more to inject some character and some easier understanding there for sure.
I think muddy is a good word for it. I think you both used it, but it just kind of blurs together eventually, which when you're automating, it's not too much of a hassle because you don't really need to know every single thing that's going on. But once you get those formers that are all doing different things and the villages and the units, I just can't imagine someone going through and making every single decision, every single turn. That is insane, Kenny.
If you want to play a game for a year and don't want to have to play various versions of that game, but one scenario and love going in depth, go at it. There is nothing wrong with being that guy.
Kenny, there are a few things wrong about being that kind of person. The sound, even more so, you don't play games for the sound here. There's not much music to note, but there are tons of sound effects. The worms were disgusting anytime that would come through, but I think the sound effects were fine. The music was fine, but like it's not notable.
Yeah, it's really background and ambient and a little bit droning. It's okay enough on its own as part of the game, but definitely not something that I would look to like just pop open on YouTube or something like that. But on a sound front, one thing I do want to commend is the voice work.
Yeah.
Because the like every single technology, every new major improvement you build, and of course all the world wonders with their cinematics, everything comes with these quotes, whether from historical figures or from the leaders of the civilization themselves, that like not only is the voice work great, but it adds so much character to these civilizations that you are dealing with and playing as, to see their perspectives on these new things.
Dustin wanted so hard to correct you and say Secret Project.
Yeah, are y'all playing Civilization or are y'all playing Alpha Centauri? These are two different games. Totally agree. Yeah, that was remarkable, and they were good, and they helped to add a dimension to these faction leaders, which I found, and maybe this happens in Civilization games, I don't recall, because Civilization games, often your faction is being led by a historical figure, right?
Yeah.
In this game, I'm glad that they're created, right? They're fictional, because they really do build out these characters from the voiceovers, from just the faction that they're leading, from your interactions with them. That was one of my favorite parts of the game, was when one of them would ring me up or I would ring them up, and we'd try to like meet in the middle somewhere. But they all interacted differently, uniquely, and had a lot of character to them. The voices definitely contributed to that. There is a spiritual successor to this game in Sid Meier's Civilization Beyond Earth that came out in 2014. I have heard not so good things about it.
I remember playing it when I came out, and interestingly, the thing I remember thinking is like, this is cool, but it doesn't have a whole lot of character or personality. Like, this is a sci-fi game, but I'm not really feeling it. And that is something I think this game actually does way better than Beyond Earth. Like, if you are there for sci-fi in terms of like scientific lore and the like horrifying ethical implications thereof, this is a good game for you.
Yeah, it really does. It has some character between cutscenes, cinematics, the awards, the little My Planet story pop-ups that happen throughout, the initial setup story. Like, it really does, for a game that could be very flat, have a little bit of heart behind it, and that's nice.
If for some reason this is your first 4X game, there are plenty of others, but basically it's just Civilization. So go play Civilization. There are a few others, but Civilization is like the one that people point to often. Kenny, what is the best Civilization game? No caveat, I just want an answer.
5.
Civilization 5. Wow, that's great. Just an answer from Kenny. If you want a disc copy, he wants to add. If you want a copy, a disc for your PC, I don't think you're going to be able to play it, but it is $7 used, loose, or $35 new, so not bad. But if you're not a collector, you can just get this on GOG right now for $6. Actually, GOG was kind enough to share this game with us for this episode. So they're always super kind, and their prices are unbeatable. And one of the things that is remarkable, Nolan in particular, but we often get scared when we have to play older PC games for the reasons we've mentioned on many other episodes. This, download, play. Easy.
Yep. One click makes it so easy, so accessible. They include all the manuals and everything that you would have gotten with the game in a digital format, so you've got it. So definitely the accessibility version of this old game is solved, both because I think the Sid Meier's games are easier to do that with, but also because GOG has done so much work maintaining those older titles and making them accessible. So thanks to them, and go pick it up there if you're going to play it.
Yeah, not sponsored, but GOG is amazing if you want to play old PC games. Legit.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our Vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. The vote does require 2/3 to swing one way or the other, and we actually have 3 votes this time. Even though Nolan's gone, Garlisle has a full vote, his second full vote, I think, on the podcast. So we will start with Garlisle. What were your final thoughts on Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri?
Oh boy, do I have a lot of thoughts about this game. So here's the deal. I think if you haven't played a Civilization game or a 4X game, this should probably not be your first. It's a little bit like, just straight up the UI and stuff, you can do better with a modern game. And if you have played Civ games before and you've decided, this is not my thing, this is probably not going to be the game that changes your mind, I think. Having said that, I did say I was up until 3 a.m. playing a round of this because I grew up on these games. Like, it is a family thing. My dad has like 7,000 hours in Civ 4 or something like that. It's utterly ridiculous. And one thing, like, when y'all talked about Civ 2 forever ago, the thing is why not just go play a newer Civ game? And that is a legitimate thing, is Beyond Earth does exist. But I think that's why Alpha Centauri is a little bit different, is it isn't just replaced. There is enough character and lore and feel to this game that I was hooked until 3 a.m. getting that story and just immersing myself in that world. And I'm not going to get that exact same experience playing a regular Civ game or another one. Like, I have been kind of on the fence here, but I think I'm hesitantly going to give it a yes. Some players are going to bounce off of it. It's not going to be for everybody, but I think for the people for whom it is for, you're going to love this one.
All right, that's one yes, and Kenny's eating good over there. I think people say that. I came in this week to Alpha Centauri wanting to give it my best, and I feel like I did. I mean, I played through 2.5 campaigns rapidly, compared to how some people play this game, because I have no desire to get bogged down in the micromanagement movement of every single thing, in part because I like to optimize and there are way too many choices to be made. And so giving it to the AI that I hope are smarter than me made it to where I was able to get through multiple playthroughs this week, and I dove in and I learned a lot in this game. But still, after playing it through 2.5 times, I think I might know maybe half of this game and this game's systems. There is just so much here. I did, for the first time maybe, felt the meme of just one more turn, just one more turn, just one more turn. And so I get that itch now, I get that. And especially on this game, it does you dirty and they know what they're doing. When you try to log off of the game, there's a voice that comes up that says like something, don't leave me. What does it say? It's like, it's trying to guilt trip you into staying.
Yeah, you're going to make the drone sad or something.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It plays on your emotions.
I like sci-fi in general, so being in a sci-fi setting really helps for me. All of that being said, should you play this game and is it for the masses? Absolutely not. No, in no way would I give this new game plus status. Did I have some fun with it? Yes, but is it going to be received by? No. Is it a quality 4X game? It's hard for me to say because I haven't much experience with them. I think it's probably a decent to good 4X game, but Garlisle mentioned it when he was talking about the Civilization comparison. If you're playing in 2023, the only reason to go back and play these early 4X games is for nostalgia reasons, because I would argue that they have been done much more palatably, much more better in recent years. So play one of those games. Don't go back and play these menus and read this wiki. But out of the 4X games we played, I've had the most fun with this one. So hopefully Kenny will at least give me a pass on that.
I will give you something, but it's not a pass. Instead, I will give you a piece of my mind.
Oh, give it to me.
Let's not pull punches. No one's surprised. I like this genre. I talked about Civ 2 and how much it meant to me. It was a huge nostalgia game for me. I had played that one a lot. I hadn't ever played Alpha Centauri, but even the kinds of things I've said going through the episode, no one's surprised by the fact that I like this game, and I am going to give it New Game Plus status. But let's set that aside as sort of a almost given, and just do a quick response to where both of you guys land, because I think there's important things to point out. Yes, I think Carlisle was almost right about everything. Know yourself. This one may not be for everybody, so though I'm going to, of course, give it a big old fat yes, that's partly just because of who I am, and I think some other people are also me, and by all means, like, jump in if that's the case. But two, I do think this one's a little bit more palatable than some others. You'd said, like, don't come into this one as a first because of some of the older complexity. I think as long as you're okay with embracing some of that automation, that can help on board where this game becomes less overwhelming. And I think it's the reason that Dustin is actually in denial, had so much fun this week, because he didn't have to get bogged down in these systems. And that's the reason this game, it might actually be a great place to enter into 4X, is because you can sort of take it a bite-sized piece at a time. Yes, it's old. Yes, some of that shows. Sure, there's some more recent 4X games that like are also ones that are like absolute must-plays if you're interested in the genre. But I think this is a good entry point for some people, and maybe even better than like Civ 2 because it does tutorials so well, and because it caveats letting you not have to manage everything. So Dustin's in complete denial. He had fun. He got hooked on One More Turn. I secretly want him to fall in love with this genre, and Carlisle, as always, is mostly right. And I loved this game. I had a lot of fun with it this week. I'll probably play it some more in the future because it was just fun and a blast, even if a little bit dated and nostalgia-y. That was too much, but I couldn't help myself. Rant over. New Game Plus for sure.
Nolan is going to be infuriated because Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri is New Game Plus certified.
Well,
it's a little.
If Nolan's got a problem with it, he should have been here.
Right? Yeah, it's weight off my back. It makes up a little bit for the travesty of not giving it to Civ 2. So,
Kenny, do you know how much he would have hated this game?
He would have hated it so much more than you.
Yeah.
He would not have tried.
Right.
He would have bounced off even harder. Like, it would have been the most uncomfortable. There's no chance without you having converted, which I thought was possible, for us to get this through with him.
This
here.
is a game that requires patience. Nolan does not
Right?
have that. But what did you think? On YouTube, 16% said yes, 8% said no, and 76% have never been to space before.
That doesn't really
Fair.
surprise me. I remember seeing this in PC gaming magazines back in the day, but I swear I'd never heard anybody talk about it after its release outside of that super small community.
Yeah, the reception was good, but it sold the fewest copies of all games in the Civilization series. Not much of a surprise because it didn't necessarily have the Civilization name, but it did have the Sid Meier's name, so it still did well. But and then not many of you, but some of you risked playing along with us this week and wrote in. Lieutenant Paddox said, much like dating someone who may not fit conventional standards of beauty, but possesses exceptional intelligence and wit, Alpha Centauri compensates for its visual shortcomings with a rich and intricate gameplay experience.
That's actually a great analogy.
Yeah, so her personality is good. Okay, you're saying this about Alpha Centauri. I've been playing 4X games since Reach for the Stars on my C64, which I believe, guys, is the first 4X game, sparking a lifelong obsession with the genre and eagerly anticipating every new Civilization release years after. Some may initially feel overwhelmed by the complex web of technology trees, secret projects, faction alliances, politics, economics, and tactics, but that only adds to the staying power of AC for me and many others. Sid Meier once said, "A game is a series of interesting choices. Insignificant decisions take just as much brain power as interesting ones, but without any of the satisfaction. And this one gives me a lot to choose from. Absolutely worthy of NGP."
Yeah,
Man after my own heart.
You'll have no shortage of choices to make on this one.
Oh my. Hey Brother 4567 said, "This is certainly not my genre, and after playing it, I'm not sure Kenny would even like it. It is extremely overwhelming and unintuitive and doesn't give you much direction. It doesn't really feel like a Civ game. It feels more like a management simulator with no real payoff. No NGP from me."
Interesting.
Defend yourself, Kenny.
No, I'm perfectly fine, like, with people not liking it. There's a reason I caveated saying, like, know yourself, and, you know, like, this is going to be a divisive type of game and genre. So I don't have a problem with people disliking it, except for you, because you're in denial.
Well, see, here's the reason why I enjoyed it more than I would have otherwise is because I did play it as a management simulator. And that is the fascinating thing here, is that you could either play it like a management simulator, or you can play it like a 4X Civ game, and anywhere in between. So it gives you some variability in how you play it there. Brojim said, "This game really gave me a hard time this week when it came to settling on a decision. Truth be told, I had fun with it, and I'm glad I was forced to put some time into a genre I usually avoid. The problem came when I got towards the end game. I was dominating in every area, but the only goal I saw was wiping everyone out. According to the game, that was the lowest scoring victory, and really against my personal goal of seeing what else the game had to offer. But because of the RNG-based research of the standard rule set and the general opaqueness of the game's systems, I had no real objective to shoot for other than launching my army. Not to fail my NGP community, I decided to start up Civilization 6. Alpha Centauri, no NGP. Civilization 6, yes NGP."
See, I told you them not making the technology, like, not defaulting it to having control was a dumb decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won that first game I did without the choosing as a Transcendence victory, but I did it by the skin of my teeth. You had to literally research every single technology, and there is a time limit on this game. I was like 3 or 4 turns away from it just ending on time, and I had to buy my way into completing the final secret project to just sneak in a win. Yeah.
And you can go and read other commentary from our community and our commentary channel on Discord. It's interesting to see because it swings both ways. I think probably half and half. Some are saying yes, go play it. Some are saying no, don't go play it.
Not surprising given the genre and the type of game and the age.
Absolutely. But for now, we're going to set aside Alpha Centauri. Kenny's coming back to it probably, and Nolan's going to be playing it for the next few months.
Almost certainly.
But we are going to randomly select the next game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days. Cross your fingers that it's not another 4X game. Randomizing now. We are going to be playing a game with one of the smallest Wikipedia entries that I've ever seen.
Well, it has a Wikipedia entry, and that's a good start.
And we have played games that
sign.
don't have that. This game was developed by 3 people in 2003 for the best handheld console.
GBA?
Of course. Something that I guess is a little encouraging is that it was re-released a number of times in 2011 for the Wii and 3DS, in 2012 for the iOS, in 2017 for the PS4, in 2018 for the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One. This is a puzzle video game.
Okay.
Known in Japan as a group of words that I'm not going to try to say. The name, because I wanted to do it, but I thought better. The game was released over here for the GBA, and it is called Gym Smashers.
JIM, JGYM, or GEM?
Do you think it's JIM, where a bunch of people just start beating up a guy named Jim?
Poor James.
I've
is just
never
getting
heard of this,
bullied
so it could be.
in middle school.
Carlisle not
Yeah.
hearing of a game is a little bit scary. It is GEM, Gem Smashers.
Okay.
And that it was brought to the iOS sounds like every other gym breaking game that
I want to say it sounds like a phone game.
Yeah.
But the fact that it got so many re-releases on so many other things makes me feel like it might be a really good
And
one.
you know,
we'll see.
this also encourages me. IGN noted that the game was, quote, one of the most original puzzle games on the GBA.
Huh. Well, I am a fan of
Interesting.
puzzle games, so looking forward to finding out what this nonsense is.
Find a copy of Gym Smashers and play it along with us this week.
And hey, while you do come play it with us, come talk about it with us. We have a Discord channel. We are super active. There is a constant community of people now joining along on every single game. And it's just a blast to participate in that and chat and bounce thoughts and share victories and losses. So come to discord.gg/newgameplus and say hi.
We also want to thank the many of you who support NGP on patreon.com, including our wonderful director level supporters, Bro Jim, Miss Muso, Super Hypered, Siegfried, and Riff. We want to say thank you to some new patrons as well. Dustin, this is not surprising.
Yeah.
But some folks took your bait from recent episodes, and we have new patrons, including Timothy, Dustin's bad Kirby takes, Dustin's furrowed eyebrows. And we have a new producer level supporter as well. So this person is very serious about supporting the show in a real and tangible way. Dustin's 5 o'clock shadow. So
Incredible.
Things
Fantastic.
are getting
Thank you.
perfect.
Things are getting hairy around here.
The community. The community didn't let us down. We do want to say a quick thank you to our many producer level supporters as well. Don't want to forget to acknowledge you guys, including Adam, Alex, and Marlene, Antonin, Ben, Big Dude, Brunt, Garlisle, Gimbin, Alex, Harold, J. Robert, Jake, Jared, Joey, Jordan, Justin, Kenny's Beard, Glenn, Knick-Knack, Corey, Levi, Maximum, Metroid, Nolan's Old Mustache, Not Enough Dog, Orlando, Workin' Punch, Pedro, Sajan, Shane, Shauna, Psycho Mantis, Thomas, Turtle, Unbedavable, and Zion. That's always a lot of work, and I'm so grateful for those of you that make me earn it each and every week.
Even Megatroid, who is not Metroid. But I
I'm reading too fast.
am glad that now my hair will be represented in the weekly producer call. So thank you for whoever did that, whether it's my eye hair, my face hair, or my realistic understanding of Kirby and his franchise.
Hair.
You can if Kirby gets hair sucked up into his mouth, does he just turn into a piece of hair that wafts through the wind? Find out next week on New Game
It's an important question.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. All of the links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Gym Smashers. Until then, I'm still the Peacekeepers.
I'm still the university.
And I'm still Captain Svensgaard.
And this has been New Game Plus.